social media, it's all negativity, negativity, negativity. And it's important for us to help reframe our thoughts, because ultimately it's not going to last forever. And we need to hear that, because we need to have hope that our life's going to get back in track, because it's important also to know that we are not what we do. And I know that's really difficult, especially, in my profession. It's a little easier because we're forced to be able to like do our scary work, but like in every other profession, especially you guys, because you guys are actually expected to have perfection in your job. Like, I think you probably have more like demands on your job for perfection than maybe it's like, the medical field, second to them. And so it's kind of hard whenever you lose your dream job, not to personalize it, but it literally has nothing to do with you. And when you can hold space for that and realize the world is in crisis, the nation's in crisis, I'm in crisis, but I'm going to get through this. I was, adept and like completely up to the challenge once, and I'll be able to do it again, if that answers your question.
Thank you. We have another one. What is your suggestion for getting back in the community after being sheltered in place? And how do you proceed to do that when you have high anxiety and PTSD?
Yeah, that's a very important one. I would say please go at your own pace, because some people are ready to get out with masks and gloves, and it's okay. Others are not quite ready yet, and just, be kind to yourself, because just because everyone else is able to like, get in the community and take the proper precautions, you may not be able to, reinitiate just quite yet. And so it's, know yourself. And high anxiety is it's difficult by itself, but when the entire nation and world is in crisis, it's like quadrupled. I would say you make sure that you are doing your breathing exercises, and they're so important. And, just really quick, for those who aren't familiar with breathing exercises, they're the number one for most doctors and surgeons and psychiatrists and therapists. It's the number one way to reduce anxiety in the most holistic way. And they call it yoga breathing or like VU breathing. And it's literally to like take 3 deep breaths in, but the count of like 15. So it's super slow breaths in, and then you hold the breath, and then you exhale super slow. And you do that for like 3 times, maybe doing some breathing exercises before you leave your house. But I would say take the proper precautions, take your hand sanitizer, take your mask, take your gloves, go to places where it's not going to be highly populated, because it is going to be a little anxiety inducing, especially to see everyone in masks. That's an alarming visual all by itself.
Yeah. It's, I think, for me, like that's been exactly what I've been doing, just to cut down on some anxiety myself, and getting out, because we're in Florida and we're opening a little quicker than some other places, and people are getting back to work a little bit. So am I. So I'm having to gauge almost hourly, like, can I do your event? Can I not? How do I feel about it? 1, and 2, how do the people coming feel about it? That's a whole nother ball of wax, but taking it slow and just one at a time. And we're all new in this, it's a new feeling. It's a new arena that none of us have been in before. I think cutting myself some slack on that too, and everyone else is a whole, it's helping me a lot. So I don't, just to kind of, agree with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were some resources that I provided as well. And sometimes you just need to know the signs of trauma. And that's one of the handouts that I think they're going to be posting to the web or whatever. It's that's a good resource to know. Like, we need to know that when you're re-experiencing, sometimes, you're thinking, all I keep thinking about is losing my job. All I keep thinking about is not being able to go back into my field. Like, what if I can't? What if it's a year? What if it's 2 years? Those kind of ruminating thoughts is a sign that you've been traumatized. And there's big T traumas, like the death of a loved one or being in a tragic accident, or small T traumas too. We're literally globally in a big T trauma right now, and it's important to be kind and loving to yourself, and not to judge yourself because you're not going to behave. This is not a normal situation. Like Becky said, this is literally unprecedented. We have no mental framework for how to handle this. And there's no background information. We just have to move, take one day at a time, move forward.
Kaprece, this is a rough one, reading this question. She says, how do you handle losing the last of your family to the virus, all your work in sight, and getting denied unemployment and PUA, I'm not actually sure what that is, all at once? And then she says that people have also been thinking that her family's death is fake and blacklisting from future tours because of it. So that sounds like a pretty big struggle too.
Yeah. So anytime there's three major stressors or traumas in a row, I would say seek professional help because according to the brain, three is a recipe for a mental break. And I'm not trying to scare you or anything. I'm sure that you've gone through all of this and you're still here and you're seeking information. So obviously you have an inner strength inside of you that's gotten you to this point. And I would say just reach out. There's a crisis hotline. I've also, provide those as well. But one, I'd like to just tell everyone right now that if you are thinking about harming yourself or taking your life, the National Suicide Prevention number is 1-800-273-8255. Also, there's a crisis text line, which is cool because you don't even have to call anyone. You can just text them. And you'll text hello, the word hello, to 741-741. And you can get immediate help, and those are free resources. You don't have to pay for that. Sometimes you might just need to talk it out because those are major. I mean, you're having your reality denied, the loss of loved ones. It's a major tragedy, and I would say please seek help. You're worth it.
We put
Definitely
those links to the chat, so if you guys need to reference that, please do. Use the resources because we don't want to lose any of our amazing people unnecessarily when we're all struggling in it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are up on the Zoom group chat right now. Carrie just posted all of the resources that Kaprece has given to us, and they're also on the Facebook. And then we'll post them again on the SoundGirls website, when we repost this. So you guys all have these information resources for you.
We have a question. How do you deal with requests for help at a time like this when you feel like you can't even help yourself?
Yeah, that's a tough one, especially if you're the go-to person that people normally lean on. I would say just be honest and authentic because we can't give out from an empty cup. We can't pour from an empty cup. And if you feel like you're depleted, I think the best thing that you could do for yourself and for your friend who's reaching out is let them know, you know what, I'm just not okay right now. And and we can be in this together, but I don't really have anything to share. Maybe we can reach out to someone together. Because when we accept the fact that we can't be the superhero, right? Especially if you're used to leading, you're like the director or the project manager or whatever, and you're usually in charge. That identity kind of goes into everything. It kind of weaves its way into everything. But sometimes we just have to reach out and ask for help, and that's okay. The strongest people are actually the ones who actually speak up and reach out for help. And I also provided 13 ways you don't have to feel guilty. It's for the things that we go through when we're in trauma and we're in crisis. Because a lot of times, especially for women, I know that we are under a lot of pressure to be all these different identities that society dictates for us. And they're very confining and restricting. If you want that resource, I think they also have it and we'll provide it for you. But just some of the things is you don't have to feel guilty for needing time for yourself or declining a call from a friend when you need the quiet time or asking for your needs to be met and not being perfect, saying no when you need to say no, setting up boundaries. This is some of the things. We need to understand that it's okay to say no. And that actually setting up pretty good boundaries. And people will respect you more if you do keep to your boundaries and you don't let them overtax you, if that makes sense.
So one of the questions we had on here, I mean, it's pretty basic, but that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, all these steps are. The question was, how do you maintain your mental health during these times? Which I think you're touching on by saying all these, things like check in with yourself. Yeah,
absolutely. That's the number one thing. You do a check-in with yourself. And a lot of times we forget about our body. Notice your body. Your body will speak to you before your mind and emotions will. If you're feeling, chest pressure or stomach aches or tingling in your limbs, or if you're feeling like your heart is fluttering, or you get like cold washes over you, those are signs that your body is needing a break. Those are anxiety signs, right? And so if that's the case, then I would say the most important thing is like to do some deep breathing, get outside and walk around. Just being outside, our brains sync up. There's a portion of our brain that actually syncs up with the rhythms of nature, and it calms your blood pressure down and your nervous system. Reach out to a friend. Sometimes just talking about what's going on, and maybe to a friend who can't even really help you, but just getting it out is very cathartic, because emotions are energy in motion. And when we harness those negative emotions on the inside, they get stored in our brains and bodies. And moving around and doing exercise and talking, it actually extinguishes those negative emotions from our body, and we can feel like a release.
What about like, say my body's not giving me any signs like that, or like, but I still kind of feel all those ways. Like, is that a thing too? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking.
Absolutely. Sometimes you can be depressed, and that's where you feel numb. You don't feel anything. You just feel like you don't want to engage in life. You don't want to get dressed. You don't want to eat. You don't want to reach out. And that's a sign that your body has gone through the fight, flight, and freeze, and now you're coming down, and it's the freeze part where you're just kind of crashing. It's important that you take care of yourself, and once again, reach out to a friend. It's important, especially in your industry, because you guys, are so specialized in what you do. Not everyone can understand your line of work. I would say reach out to someone in your industry and just tell them, like, this is what's going on with me. Like, how are you? Venting one to another is important, because it's like someone's validating my experience, and B, I'm actually being able to talk about it without having been trapped inside of myself with these feelings and emotions.
I can say that's really helped me. There's 5 or 6 SoundGirls that I'm in contact with all the time, and we're on a Facebook Messenger group, and we're checking in with each other every so often, and if we don't hear from one of the other ones, we're like, hey, where'd you go? And we'll call them out, and then we did that earlier this week, all 6 of us, I think, that are on there, and one of the girls just sent me a text on the side and said, I don't want to answer to everybody, but I'll tell you, and that just, that was hard for her at the moment to do, I'm sure. And I didn't really, I'm not a counselor. I didn't really know what the right thing to say was, but I was like, I'm here and I have time if you want to FaceTime, or if that's all you can say is just that, like, I'm here for you. What can I do? And she was like, I just need to tell somebody I'm good, and that worked for her at the moment, and me. So, and no judgment that from anyone else, that didn't hear from her or any of that. It just happened to work for the 2 of us at that time,
Yes.
to share,
And journaling too, like, it's important that you like journaling is very cathartic. Like, you actually can get your thoughts out. Sometimes you can't make sense of your thoughts. You don't know what you're feeling. You don't know what you're thinking. And so sometimes just getting a pen and just writing out everything that you're thinking and feeling is, you can feel an emotional and even a physical release from your body. You can do this, like, if you don't like writing, you can do it through like painting, or you can do it through like drawing, or you can use your little voice memo if you have like a smartphone, and just like, sometimes I just walk and I just like vent into my voice app. And I do a verbal journaling, and by the time I'm done, I'm like, I feel better.
I do that with a voice to text. Sometimes when I'm driving and I have something on my mind and I just need to spill it out, I'll just go into my notepad and turn on voice to text. It'll just put it all in there for me. You don't always want to read those back later, but at least it's out.
Exactly. And honestly, that's the way we extinguish those things from our body. They actually will stay in our bodies unless we like have some way of like externalizing them.
Mm-hmm. We have a question, advice for breaking out of a creative rut and discouragement.
Yeah, that can be hard too. And that is, that's when our brains and bodies get depressed. We do get into like creative ruts. I would say sometimes we have to, like, in therapy, I always tell my clients to lean into the resistance, or if you're feeling the resistance to do something creative, I would say push into it, and maybe do something different. Maybe like if you're not much with a green thumb, maybe try planting some plants or some herbs or something in the backyard, or, you know, maybe try, you know, building a birdhouse or something that's outside of your wheelhouse. You know, even maybe trying to create a new website or whatever. Just try a different medium that you're used to. And because a lot of times, I always tell my clients, be brave enough to suck at something new. Because that way, you know, we're growing and we're using different parts of our brain, and it actually stimulates our brain in other areas. And so that can, you know, revive the creativity for the things that we are passionate about.
That's what Susan and I are doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Starting the podcast, we're sucking at something new. but seriously, in all seriousness, it's been my saving grace the last couple of weeks because of no work, or last couple months rather. Just I'm texting Susan all the time about the podcast and talking about ideas and thoughts, and she has 2 jobs right now, and God bless her, she's just like so patient with me. But it is her, we're helping each other by doing this too, and it's awesome to be able to talk about this. And I think all of the people out here that are logging on and stuff too, all you guys are throwing out questions, because we are talking about it, and it's been hard. And everybody that I talk to, every time I talk to them, I'm like, how you doing? Oh, I'm hanging in there, you know, I'm doing all right. But it's this like, ugh, come on kind of feeling and emotion. And after talking to 20 people like that a week, I'm almost drained, because I'm also getting clients that are calling that are feeling that way, and employees and stuff. So one of the questions here too is like, how do you handle that when you've got all of these other things coming at you, but you're still feeling a little, you know, like, is it okay to just stop for the day or check out, or is it okay to rest? Is it okay to, you know, I don't know how exactly I'm trying to word this.
Absolutely. You know, it's actually not only okay, it's like it's super important that you do, because if you keep pushing yourself, you're going to hit a wall, and then the crash is going to be even bigger. So if you feel like, you know, I don't have it today, like I literally can't answer a phone call, and this is going to be a day where I just like hang out in my pajamas all day. And that's okay, because that's your body and your brain telling you, I've had enough and I can't do anymore. And I think we're in such a driven society to do. The more you do, the more successful you're seen as, and the more important that you are. And that's just not how that we're created. Like, you know, we are designed to have intrinsic purpose. And if you meditate, meditation is very important, that you can like tap into, and you can center into peace and calm that's already in your body, because we are made of energy. And sometimes if we, like, yoga is excellent for that too, to stretching our body and releasing some of that energy and just tapping in. Those are ways I think that we can really ground ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think to me, it's there's a lot of the same feeling as going on right now, as if somebody posted this on the private site yesterday, just having that feeling of finishing an album in the studio after you've been working with the same people all year, or coming off tour when you've been at real high stress and doing your job and being with your family on the road, and then you come home and there's like nothing going on. It's kind of that same feeling, but for months on end. And
Yes.
I think, go ahead.
It was like the day after Christmas, but like months long, right?
Right.
Because this you build up to this amazing moment, and then you have this experience, and then it just goes away, and then like it just bottoms out. And so that's difficult, because, you know, we, especially, you know, you guys, because you do these amazing things in production and sound, and like, and then once the, you know, you complete a project, you guys have another one, right? And usually now you don't, now nothing's lined up. And so that uncertainty is a big part of grieving, to not know what's going on and not know what tomorrow, that's a deep loss of control. And when we have a loss of control, we have anger, we have depression, we have irritability, frustration. We want to abuse substances in order, because what we're doing is trying to self-regulate. We're trying desperately to self-regulate through external means. And actually, you can regulate your nervous system without having to use those, drugs and alcohol and things of that nature. That's what, learning how to breathe, taking walks, talking to people. You're actually taking your nervous system into your own hands and regulating it in a calm and peaceful manner that brings integration and not more addiction.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Being someone that's been an addict for years and years. So that's really helping me right now. We were talking about that. I was a drug addict 19 years ago, or am, like overcoming all that. And I work through these steps all the time and journal and breathe, and just downloaded a yoga app, which I haven't done yet, I'll admit, but I'm going for it because I need it, and talking to people and trying to stay doing those things. So any other tips as far as like self-care goes that we can do in the COVID times? I know some states are open, you can go get your hair done now or whatever, but some of us are tempted to shave it off and go for it baldy and see what happens. Like those are my self-care things I do, is like my hair and my toes. I haven't been able to do either one of those. So, what do you have other tips other than taking walks and things like that?
So self-care is really personal, and it has to do with what interests you. Because for me, it's like a bubble bath and a big glass of wine. But I can't do that every single night, otherwise I become a wino. but it's important that you know yourself. And so I know a lot of my clients have gotten puppies during the quarantine, because puppies are amazing for helping you. Because the science behind of looking into the eyes of a puppy, when they're it's called mirror neurons, and actually the oxytocin is released from our brain, which is the same chemical that's released in mother-infant bonding. And that's why
I didn't know that. Sorry, I
love it so much.
Yeah,
I just got to. I want a puppy.
Yeah, that's why puppies are so therapeutic, because we release oxytocin when we look in their eyes and we play with them. It's the same bonding gene as a mother to a child.
That's puppies. Amazing.
We need to go play with some puppies.
There's actually a lot of, and it would depend on the area that you're in, but there's a lot of shelters and stuff that are overrun. They have a lot of extra animals right now because people like panic and can't take care of theirs anymore. People pass away, stuff like that. So definitely check your local like SPCA and rescue groups and stuff like that to see what you can find.
Yes.
I have a lot of cats and a very fluffy dog, and they are amazing because I have to get up in the morning. There is no option, even if I want to just stay in bed all day, because I have an Australian Shepherd, and if anyone has one out there is no sleeping in with an Australian Shepherd.
Yeah, they're high energy.
Mm-hmm. But it's good for me, because then I have to go out, I have to take a walk with him, I have to get up, and it just kind of forces me into that, because I'm okay neglecting myself, but I'm not okay neglecting my poor dog, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why I'm okay neglecting myself. That's not great. But
I was like, can we dive into that a little bit more?
That's not great, sorry. But at least like I'm not going to neglect him,
And neglecting self, that's a big one. Sometimes self-care is as small as like washing your makeup off before you go to bed, or like taking, care of yourself, or putting, your lotion on it. Because a lot of times when we get depressed, the self-care goes out the window first. Mm-hmm. We don't, shower or bathe, or we don't wash ourselves. And not that we're unclean, it's just that we're so used to taking care of everyone else that we're always the last on the list. And so just something as small as like going in and like, if you have like a self-care regimen, and me, I'm really bad about taking my makeup off, but like I've been forcing myself to do it lately, because that's my self-care, because I know that I don't want because what happened, my daughter's doing this makeup stuff, and then my sister, she's selling all these beauty products. She's telling me, she says, do you realize when you sleep at night, like when your temperature goes up, your face boils in the chemicals of your makeup? And so I'm like, great. And so that's been like my self-care. Like I'm gonna go wash my face before I go to bed. And honestly, what it does, it's called self-efficacy. And that's what's been lost, especially in you guys' industry. Self-efficacy is self-trust. Like I can trust myself. Like the person who lost the dream job of 8 years, there's a loss of self-trust there. Can I get another dream job? And sometimes self-efficacy and self-trust gets built by small things like that, believe it or not. Knowing that I'm gonna go walk today, and I'm gonna walk 3 times this week, and whenever you meet your own small goals, that builds that self-trust where I'm like, okay, I can do these things, I can do hard things.
Another question someone wrote was how to get your confidence back, and I think we're on that same line of talking right here. So how do you get your confidence back?
Yeah, so confidence, in our line of work, we call it self-love. And a lot of times self-love gets disguised as like productivity. Like if I'm like kicking ass and doing a great job, then yeah, my self-esteem is awesome. But when I have nothing to do, what happened to my self-esteem? And so a lot of times, maybe you can shift goals, gears, and like to a different goal. Maybe I need to reach out. Maybe I need to go volunteer at the SPCA. Maybe I need to do something else so I can build that self-compassion, self-love piece. Maybe I can't do an amazing job, doing sound, for my dream, band or whatever, but I can do something that gives back to the community. I can help in some ways that makes me feel better about myself. To know that I have good inside of me. I have positive energy that I can share with the world. And that actually does help with that self-confidence and self-love piece.
We actually were talking about that for a podcast we recorded, which will come out soon. Earlier today is how to volunteer while we're doing. A lot of people aren't doing anything, and one place that is super open and needs people are houses of worship. So if you have a local church, or even like there's one down the street from me that's huge, and they always have these huge events, like it's like a shopping mall inside, like it's giant. So if there's something like that in your area, like go and check it out, email them, ask them, go in person and see if somebody's there, so you can find something to help in your profession, or be an usher, be somebody who's helping with the kids area if you're open, something like that. I know like for Becky and for myself, working at the churches has been nice and consistent, because we can go there and work in our profession and still kind of keep our skills, learn things, but it's not
there's a lot of like rallies and stuff going on too right now, and protests where they need sound equipment. And we're putting a lot of those resources up on the website. A lot of companies are offering SoundGirls. Actually, SoundGirls Productions is offering their sound system for free. I know my company and a few others that are doing the same thing. And if you just want to take the sound system out and go help a rally, go do that. I know that's helping me. There's a bunch of people that are getting together to do like a music thing. They can only have 50 people come, but it's outside, and I'm sure the people in the street and everywhere else, and we're putting it on an FM radio, so people can dial in if they want to stay in their cars and stuff too, and we're doing that in July 4th actually. So it's all volunteer right now, but you know what, it's something I've been working on for 2 weeks, and it's thrilling my soul and getting me a little more excited, to do stuff. So
that's great.
Yeah. There's definitely things out there that are starting to come out that we can do, even if it's not a paid job, which sometimes just seems like, good Lord, I've been doing this 20 years to get no pay. But right now, that's what I can do to keep myself mentally stable. So I'm doing it.
Very true.
Yeah, someone's asked that she said that it's hard to find in-person volunteer opportunities, and of any virtual things. We try to share on the SoundGirls page as much as we can when we find those things, so we can kind of look and post more to help share with you. Reach out to your network. That's my advice.
Yeah, and a lot of the churches are actually going back into the building. I know that the one in Windermere next to my house did, and they first did a drive-in church, which it was a giant production. Like they had so many people running around doing all this stuff, and so the whole service was in the car through the radio. And now they moved it back in. I know they have a whole team that's running that. They're taking volunteers in person, and that's called Life Bridge Church in Windermere. And I think Church in the Sun is back in the building too. There's a couple churches.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
Susan's works there now,
Yeah.
but that's in Florida area. But I know there's people from all over on here, even the UK. So I would say, like Susan said, reach out to your local networks like that too. There's Facebook has AV sites for your locals. I know a lot of the local SoundGirls chapters also have information about local places. Email the chapter heads, find out from them. There's a ton of resources. Carrie's been posting resources this whole time we're talking also.
Yeah.
Go back on the thread and check those. They're everywhere. And if you still can't find something, email us and we'll see if we can help. You know, we're here to help. So that's that. Other questions, guys, email some questions in, write some questions in. I'm running out.
So
What else can we ask you?
there's a couple of questions that are kind of along the same lines of how can we kind of transform our industry from being grueling and kind of not very empathetic at all, so that in the future, when we do have deaths in the family, or we do have we need a mental health break because we're working every single day for endless and endless days, how do we transform our industry to be more accommodating to that? Like, I remember when my dad was hospitalized for almost a year. He was hospitalized for 9 months with a bunch of problems. I could barely get time off to go see him. And even then, it was kind of like, are they going to replace me because I needed a day off? You know, I have a contract, stuff like that. So, I mean, our industry is less forgiving, I think, than a lot of other ones.
I don't know a lot about your industry, only through, you know, knowing Becky these last 10 years, but it does seem like that your industry is very like, you're demanding, and like you guys can get replaced really quick. And so it's sad because when you can be replaced really quick, you don't really have a voice in some things. And so I think it's maybe that could be something that you guys, you know, champion with the SoundGirls, maybe a mental health, you know, objective where you guys can like connect with people, you know, in the nation, around the world, about, you know, putting more awareness out there. Because no matter what, mental health has to come first. If mental health is not there, there's gonna be a breakdown in not only in our personal health, but a breakdown in the job that we're doing and like the performance that we're able to give. And, you know, mental health it's so sad because people who, even celebrities who have reached like Kate Spade, it breaks my heart. Like, she was at the top of her, you know, and she took her life, and somebody missed that. And so I don't want that to be so, you know. I think if we promote more awareness around the subject, I think that there could be a movement toward that.
What are some ways you think that we could help promote the mental awareness? Like, obviously doing webinars like this, but are there other things we can do that can help?
Yeah, my encouragement to you is, why you guys are all stuck in your houses anyway, like, why not do some like more Facebook Lives or Instagram Lives where you guys talk about like mental health and how it's important in your industry, and how, you know, without it, like, you don't get to go visit, you know, your family who's sick or in the hospital, or, you know, and maybe have an open forum, like, what do you think about this? Like, because people love to like give their opinion. and so maybe just like, you know, what do you think about this? Or even, you know, I know there's in your Instagram story, you can ask questions. What do you think about mental health? Do you think it's missing in the, you know, the live sound audio, you know, industry, and what are your thoughts about it? Maybe just start the conversation.
I know that there's some people that have been doing that just over the years, seeing, you know, how our industry has changed too, and go from a lot of crazy rock and roll drug party days, you know, and people now like, oh wow, you know, not that we haven't always known that like drug addiction and stuff is bad or whatever, but like we need help when these people come off the road and go to retire too, because they're changing, their bodies are changing, and their hormones are changing, and their minds are changing, and now they've been on the road 40 years, and a lot of these older roadies have committed suicide, and that's a big deal in our industry. It's probably a really high number. I don't know the stats exactly, but probably higher than most industries, and probably due to that, we're coming home and depressed and stuff. And then there were drugs and parties, like, every era of our industry, you can see, like, the 70s were something, and then the 80s were something else, and all through that. And just talking to some of the different people that have been in the industry that long, like, I'm on a tour that's a alcohol-free, drug-free tour, and they've made it that way because of the artist, so it fits great for someone like me who was a drug addict forever. It's a great place for me to be, and a great family to be around, and everyone checks in on everyone's mental health throughout the tour, and do you guys need to go to a meeting? I'll go, and we all are willing to go with another person to a meeting too if they need it, and stuff like that. So I know some people are putting those into place already, but I guess I'm just not informed enough on more of them, so maybe we do have that on our website somewhere, and I just haven't looked yet, but we'll throw up resources for that as well when we find
Harry
it.
shared a link for tourhealth.org, so we can check
Great.
that out, and we'll put that in the comments.
Tourhealth.org. I knew there was one somewhere.
And I think the real answer to that is that when you are put into a position where you make those calls, like organizing a tour, or you are a crew chief or something, just having that empathy for other people. It's us that does it. So it's us, those who are working with other people, that does it. So when you get into that opportunity to lead, be that kind of leader.
Absolutely.
We have a question from Beth. How can we protect our mental health while bearing witness to all the awful and enraging things going on in the news? It's important to know about these things and do what we can to help, but it can be overwhelming.
It's absolutely overwhelming. And for like weeks there, my husband was like binge watching the news, and like his anxiety was spiking through the roof because, we own a company. And so I told him, honey, I'm going to unplug the TV. So I would say, limit your exposure to the news. Yes, we have to be informed, and I am no way advocating, for us to just completely zone out. But when don't wake up to the news. I would say have a peaceful, calm, like morning routine.
It's like setting boundaries, but for the news.
It is. We need boundaries in every area, and especially because everything that's coming in is negativity. And so it's like literally, I there was like a week there, I didn't even open my social media because I was just like, I have to hold space for people. I have to go to work and hold space for the trauma. I can't have trauma coming in every medium. So my TV was off and my phone was off, just for me to be able to have the mental space to be able to do my job. And so, I would say absolutely have boundaries. And I would say, some of you, your day may start at nighttime. Whenever your day begins, maybe don't start off with the news. Don't start off scanning, social media, because I think that's where it gets exacerbated. And you start your day off, in an anxious tone. It only kind of like spirals out of control from there.
So something that I did is I learned I have an iPhone. I don't know how it works for other ones, but you can set time limits for your apps. And it's across the computer as well. So today I have a time limit for Facebook for like 10 minutes. Like I keep it super short, 10 minutes. That's all I get. And then it blocks it out and it's like, hey, you're out of time. So today I had to ignore it because we're doing this webinar, but that has been really helpful because even having your phone check up on you and say like, hey, you've been on Instagram for 15 minutes. Like you have to click OK before you can go through, or you're locked out of your Facebook time. So put it down. Technology is against us, but there's also some things that they're starting to add back that kind of help us manage. I think the controls are for kids, but I've been using it too for myself.
Absolutely.
I didn't even know those were on there.
My screen. because there's screen time too. Like it'll tell you your screen time. And the other day it said I was down like 21%. I was like a personal goal. I was like, yes. That's a win.
Yay,
Right now,
I have
like, all the wins I
boundaries.
can get, right?
Right. So let's talk about that a little bit, like to celebrate the wins, and what that means mentally for us, because they're small right now. I mean,
They're
I've
super
got to
small,
admit,
right? And so,
they're
yeah, I think they're a win because you guys are used to having like you when you guys do things, it's literally in the big way, like where the world watches. And so now it's important to switch gears and celebrate the small wins. Like for me, it was like celebrating the fact that my screen time was down. I didn't, and literally my job is sometimes I have to walk people through literally not taking their own life. And so it's a big deal. And so, but yet my screen time being down was important to me because that created the sacred space or the mental health space, whatever you want to call it, for me to be able to do my job. And so I would say, if like you get outside and you take a walk, celebrate that. Be like, man, I did a good job. Like celebrate the smaller things that move you toward the bigger things.
that makes me laugh because I'm like, I could just see myself dancing in the front yard when I get back from my walk, and my neighbor's gonna be like, seriously? I'm like, I'm celebrating my walk, lady. Let it go. She's old and crotchety, my neighbor, but that's fine.
We try to just having the kids around for the summer. We're just trying really hard to be better for them. So kind of forcing them, even though they don't want to go on walks, and like forcing them to like, okay, I ate cake for breakfast this morning. It's fine. I'm fine with that. But they're not going to eat cake for breakfast. They didn't see me do it. So like I'm trying to do those little things so that it looks better for them to see. Same thing with the dog. I'm going to take care of the dog. I'm going to do these things, and it makes me better too.
Mm-hmm.
Cake for breakfast is fine sometimes, right?
Sometimes it's absolutely hey, that could be self-care too. Just like my occasional glass of red wine.
I have a question for you, Kaprece. What has been your biggest lesson learned in the last 3 months?
That I'm not a robot and that I can't keep pushing myself, and I have to hold space for myself too. And like, we have a website for therapists, and like we've been venting about our lives just like everybody else. And so to hold space for myself and to know that sometimes having the world shut down, even though it's a big T trauma, can actually have small gifts in it. Like I've been able to spend more time with my kids and like really get to know them and have one-on-one conversations, which I do anyway, but like they're more available because they're not like, they couldn't leave the house and go hang out with their friends because, at some point you stop becoming cool and your kids want to spend time with everybody else. So now that they're stuck at the house, like just, like those are really special moments for me. But also not comparing too, because I saw all the moms like, I have my kid on a regimen and they're already done with 4 chapters of math. I'm just like, oh God. Like,
a poor child.
Yeah.
And then because I know other parents are like saying, oh crap, I'm horrible. I'm not making my child do math. It's just like, it's, allowing me to be exactly where I am and not putting pressure on me to be something else, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally.
What do you recommend for how many hours glued to Zoom calls? I wonder if that's to lower them or just to handle that you have to endure them.
Yeah, that's hard because for a while there, we were only doing our mental health work through Zoom. And so what we did at my office is that we said there has to be a 15-minute break in between so we can get a breather and like just get up and walk around. Because like, just so you know, staring at a screen, especially, the blue lights and all that, any kind of screen time causes aggression in your brain.
Well, that explains a lot.
Yeah. It does. It creates a lot of residual like anxiety and aggression, and so it can actually make you irritable if you're staring at a screen too long. And so just getting up and walking around.
That explains my whole life.
That's
yeah.
Maybe that's where the irritability came from, Zeus.
It really does. Actually, it's also linked to depression too. There's a strong correlation with screen time and depression. that the more that you're glued to a screen, that the higher, the depression is, because like you get a small dopamine reward when you first look at a screen, and then it goes away like anything else. And then like you need more screen time. And so just, I would say take a break, walk around, like, get some water. It's important to, as much as you can, to limit it, because I had like, at one point it was like 8 clients on Zoom in one day. And thankfully each one was like at least 10 minutes between each other where I could like, take a deep breath, run to the restroom.
Right. Do you think that like most people are doing like a teletherapy thing right now, or are people still accepting patients like face to face and in person?
I know that most offices are doing telehealth. We returned the office 2 weeks ago, but still a lot of my clients are just not okay to come back in yet, and that's absolutely fine. I want them to honor what they can do. I don't want them to come outside if they're not ready for it. That could really cause like a relapse in their work.
Are there resources that people can find? You shared, are they on that page that you shared for
they
people
are,
to
and
do telehealth?
Yeah, and so I encourage you to use resources that are vetted and that also vet therapists, which means that they actually verify their credentials before they allow you, access to them. And there's 3 that actually vet those, and it's psychologytoday.com, and then findatherapist.com, and then webmd.com. Those 3 absolutely are safe, and I can get behind them because they actually verify the credentials of the therapist before they will post them on their site.
Is there a common issue for there to be fake therapists?
Well, I mean, there's therapists who aren't licensed, and the number one thing that we have in ethical law is do no harm, just like a physician. And we've had to have that in place because there has been people who they're not licensed and they do a lot of harm because they're not clinically trained, especially like, Christian counseling. Christian counseling and mental health therapy are 2 separate things. They're not one and the same.
That makes sense.
So, if there are, this was a question I just thought of off the top of my head. If there are people that already have a counselor and they're going to someone, or they have, and they've been placed on medication and now they're not with their counselor anymore in this time, their medication may have to change or something may fluctuate. Like, how do you speak to somebody like that? Like, how would you encourage them?
So I work hand in hand with several psychiatrists in my area network, and we work hand in hand with each other. If they get patients that don't have a counselor, they'll refer them to me and vice versa. Medication management is a big deal, and only psychiatrists can do it, or a medical doctor, and a therapist can certainly help them, get on a proper schedule and boundaries with it. But I would say it's important, A, to check in with your doctor, and B, and most psychiatrists will make sure that you're in therapy. And if not, then, reach out, because it's twofold. You need your body needs the chemicals to create the serotonin, but then you're not going to naturally just think better because you have serotonin in your body. You need to learn how to like refute negative thoughts and learn how to manage them as well. It's like it's the 2-front war.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thanks for explaining that. We have a question that said, can you explain the process of getting used to a therapist, finding the right fit, and how long treatment should be? Like, what can someone expect if they do reach out for help?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because choosing a therapist is very personal. And I would encourage you to shop around. And some therapists, I know I do, I allow free phone consultations where the potential client can call me and ask all the questions they want, ask me about, my method and my approach and things like that. I would absolutely encourage you to do that, because if your personality and the therapist personality doesn't click, you're not going to feel safe enough to open up and share difficult things with them. It's important to to shop around and call around, and also like talk to your friends who, you know, who are in therapy and they would really enjoy their therapist. Maybe start there.
I've been noticing in personal experience that we've had to call like a dozen people for even to get a response right now, and I know you guys are like crazy booked. Um, but what do we just have to be more adamant and keep calling?
Yeah, I apologize. That's really sad to hear. Yeah, we are swamped right now, but a simple phone call shouldn't take too much trouble, right? And so I would say if they're not going to call you back, I wouldn't. A therapist you have to pursue is not it's a kind of a red flag to me. I would say if they're not calling you back, maybe that's a sign to move on. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something.
Yeah, I got you.
Got another question there, Suze? I'm just looking around at some of these. I think I asked all the ones that I have. Anybody else have questions? Please write them in, text them in, Facebook them in, whatever.
To go off that, one of the other ones is I've been thinking of finding doctors now as dating rather than like just let me just go with whoever, because as I got older, I realized like I don't have to like the like I don't have to go to this person if I don't like them. And it took me a long time in my life to be able to do that, to just be like, you know what, this person is not for me. So like my chiropractor closed their office. So I'm like, what do you do? And can you explain to me your method so that when I call and make an appointment with someone else, I can understand like to get the same thing, because I've had these other ones that I didn't like. You know, so describe to me how it is. And he was super open to that. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It is like dating because a friend of mine, you know, very intelligent, proficient, you know, professional person, went through 5 therapists before she found someone that she felt like she was comfortable with, where the personality and the modality that the therapist worked from felt like it was comfortable for her. Because, you know, I do talk therapy, but I also do EMDR, which is a bilateral therapy. It's some people absolutely love it and some people don't like it, you know, and so I don't always do that, but it's important to know, you know, what each therapist does, because there are some therapies that didn't mesh well for my friend, like person-centered, and I'm not bashing person-centered because every therapist has their own modality. It's more of a hands-off approach, kind of a, you know, letting the client just talk, and the therapist doesn't do a lot of directing at all, and they kind of just sit there. And so, and that's how they believe that it works best. For someone like me, it's more like a mutual participation where the client participates and then I participate. I'm not in a full, because, you know, there's a directive mode and non-directive. I'm kind of in the middle. And then the Freudian approach is like you sit on the couch and you just talk and your therapist kind of like writes things down and speak. That doesn't work for me. I need a therapist to talk back to me, you know? And so it's important to know those kind of things, because you can have a really bad first experience and never really want to go back.
I actually had that happen to me because my first experience with any counseling was court ordered. So it was like required that I go. Yeah, it wasn't pretty because I didn't want to be there. She didn't want me there. It was a whole mess. Like, but Kaprece might remember this because we worked together years ago at a Starbucks. But my counselor used to come in to Starbucks and order a coffee and sit on the front porch. And I was like, frig, dude, now I got to see you here too. Go on. God. I hated her. And but I was required to do it. And then she actually referred me to a friend of hers. And she's like, you're going to be better with her because you and I are going to kill each other. And you don't, I'm not the therapist for you. And I was like,
did that work out better for you?
It really did.
Okay.
So she referred me to somebody who actually spoke my language better. I you know, and she knew that more than I mean, I didn't even know if I could switch because, like I said, I was court ordered to do it. So yeah, that was a whole thing, you know. But then I realized through the other therapist, like, oh, this is the kind of therapist I need. Somebody like you were saying that's more conversational, and that can ask me questions too, because I didn't know how to, and sometimes still don't know how to express myself properly. you know, and ask a question the right way, or say, you know,
Mm-hmm.
can you describe to me what you're talking about? But she was able to help me figure that out. Like she was
Yeah,
even able to
absolutely.
help teach me how to say what I was trying to get out of my head.
Yeah. And I think a good therapist will refer you if they feel like that there's no connection there. I know there's been a couple that I've had to refer out because the client wasn't making any progress. And so hey, I'm not the right person for every person. And so that kind of, you know, awareness and humility is not only important for me, it's important for the client, because I want them to get with somebody who that they can have the best progress with, the best fit. And I like what you said, Becky. It's absolutely okay to fire your therapist and find someone new. Like you're not stuck with them for life. You know, if it doesn't work, I would say, you know, shop around.
We have a couple questions. When a learned coping mechanism stops working, what should a person do?
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's why I with my clients, I tell them they need a toolbox of coping mechanisms, because one kind of you kind of get burnt out on one. And so that's where therapy does come into play, because with a therapist, they can teach you different coping mechanisms and skills. And like a coping mechanism, for example, is just like knowing, like being in touch with your body, believe it or not, and like reading the signs of like, wow, I feel like I have pressure in my chest. That's anxiety. And just like acknowledging that your body, acknowledging the sensation, and be like, okay, now what do I need in this moment? And like acknowledging your need. That's actually a coping skill. And there's so many of them out there. But if you feel like there's one that's not working for you, I would either, you know, talk to a therapist or like talk to a friend. Talking out things is so important. And I can't emphasize the importance of that. I think we really underestimate how important it is to connect with other people. We're wired for connection. There's also a book called by Dr. Susan Jacobs. I think it's Susan. Yes. And she's amazing. She talks about the science of attachment and the science of connection. And like our brains are wired to connect to people. And when we don't connect with them, we fall into duress and anxiety and depression. And so just talking to someone, I mean, even if it's like talking to the mailman, I don't know, get it out, talk to somebody, you know. Sometimes you may be more introverted, and that's okay. Just, you know, or, you know, like Susan does, like talking to your voice message app and just get it out.
We have a couple more. Do you feel self-directed CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can be effective? And are there any specific resources that you'd recommend if it's self-directed?
Mm-hmm. So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is I think most counselors use it. It's a good base therapy, and what it is like it's helping identify your thoughts, redirecting them, and knowing when you're having self-defeating thoughts. Like a self-defeating thought would be like, man, my life sucks right now. It's not going to get better. I'm literally not, it's not going to get better for me. And that kind of thought, we need to refute it, right? And so like a practicing CBT would look like this. Now, what is the evidence that's not going to get better? Well, there's a lot of evidence right now when you look around, but you're like, you know what? How likely is it that life's going to go back to normal? And so you start walking yourself through refuting your negative thoughts. And I think CBT is quite effective, and I encourage everyone to like. There's books too on CBT that are pretty basic in layman's terms. That'd be a good resource to help you guys manage unwanted thoughts or like incessant thoughts or like negative thinking, because we all fall into a rut of thinking negatively, especially when we're bombarded by negative stimuli. And to be able to learn how to redirect those thoughts. And practicing gratitude is a big CBT thing. Because when we practice gratitude, our brains release happy chemicals like norepinephrine and serotonin, and like just practicing gratitude can actually change our mood. And ironically, if you'll just smile, like when we smile, it releases chemicals from our brain as well. Like there's like little tools that we can do. But yeah, self-directed to CBT can be really effective.
I'm gonna walk around with my mask on doing this like all day.
I mean, I've been thanking people for listening. So instead of saying like I'm sorry that I am like putting all of this on you, I try to make a point to say like thank you for listening and thank you for hearing me out. And that helps me because then I'm acknowledging that they made space for me, right? And then I
Yeah,
feel better because I'm not like just putting myself down further by apologizing for talking to a friend.
absolutely. And that's empowerment too. Whenever we're always apologizing, we are relinquishing our power. And we are minimizing ourselves and minimizing our experience. But exactly when we thank someone, thank you for taking time for me. And like even sometimes when I run late for my clients, I'll never say, "Oh, I'm so sorry I was late." I'll say, "Thank you so much for waiting for me." It's a self empowerment thing. It makes us feel better about ourselves. It makes the person feel better about being there for us, and it empowers both individuals. It's a really good CBT technique, actually.
Are there some other techniques like that? Like gratitude was
There's
one you
other
mentioned, and thankful. I don't know about this. Like this is the first time I'm hearing
there's
about
a
this.
there's a question for different
I was like
counseling
CBD, like the
theories.
oil. What are you talking about?
CBT.
CBT. I'm
Cognitive
learning.
behavioral therapy, meaning your thoughts connect to your behavior. So the whole premise behind CBT is that our thoughts affect our behavior. And so if we can get our thoughts in order, we can change our behavior. And so I attest to that in many, many ways. But when there's a trauma piece, right, sometimes we have to do trauma work because we can try to change our thoughts all day. But if the back of our brain is imprinted a trauma memory, we can't overwrite that in many ways. And so that's why like doing EMDR is really powerful because it literally helps the body unstick the five senses that are connected to that traumatic memory.
Can you talk a little bit more about EMDR? Like what exactly that is?
Yeah, EMDR is so powerful. It's eye movement desensitizing reprocessing therapy.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, I know.
Can
A
So
you say
lot of
that
big
one again?
words.
eye movement desensitizing reprocessing therapy. And
Okay.
so the brain is like Play-Doh. Okay. So we've learned this about 25 years ago that neuroplasticity, a big fancy word that means the brain can heal itself. It's a good thing. A memory is like taking a Tonka trunk and rolling over that Play-Doh brain. It leaves like a little path. That's called a neural pathway. Um, a traumatic neural pathway memory records your five senses. So what does that look like? The example I give my clients is say a woman is in your city, she's leaving work at dusk, she's walking home, and she passes a Starbucks. There's a dark alley, a shadowy figure like drags her into the alley, grabs her purse, throws her against the cobblestone wall, and runs off. In that moment, her brain records everything in the five senses: the smell of the coffee, the narrow pathway, the green shirt he's wearing, the sense of like the close proximity of the alley. And so she tries to repress it. She tries to not think about it anymore. And 10 years later, she's in a different city. She's in a library. She goes down this really narrow book aisle. The librarian is like brewing coffee. She sees a green book. And what do you think is going to happen to her brain? Because there's three
Yeah.
levels of consciousness, right? There's the subconscious we're not aware of, the preconscious that we can bring into awareness, and then the conscious mind of what we're currently aware of. So those five senses get triggered, and that original trauma awakens, and our body feels like it's reliving it. It may go into the pre-conscious where we're not aware of why we're panicking, but she can go into a full-blown panic attack and not even know why. PTSD is when it comes from the subconscious all the way to the conscious mind and they have a flashback. And so why is it important EMDR? EMDR goes in, you have to do an in vivo experiencing, which means you have to walk through that trauma with the therapist while you're watching a bilateral movement. And that's difficult, but that's the only thing I think that's probably the most difficult thing because it actually unsticks the five senses from your body. The first time you see it, the patients begin to sweat, they begin to cry. I've had clients almost pass out on me. I had to help them breathe. And so, but that first pass, EMDR unsticks the five senses from the body so they can actually think about the memory and look at the memory without having the physiological symptoms in their body. And a lot of times what they'll say to me is like, I feel like I'm looking at it, but like through a window, because now their body's no longer stuck in that memory. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've never heard of that at all. That's so fascinating. Like, I mean, you've heard of people, um, like in movies, you'll see them experience that, right? Where they'll like recall and they'll like flash back to it. But I've never realized that that was like a whole therapy. That's amazing.
It is, and they use bilateral movement, which is simulated from REM sleep, like rapid eye movement sleep. And so, because therapists, doctors have found, researchers have found that the REM cycle is where our body heals itself. In our deepest sleep, we go into like a comatose state. And so they paired it with therapy to help the brain heal from traumatic memories, because our brains can't store properly a traumatic memory. It's kind of like, I call them trauma apps. Have you ever like had too many like apps like open on your phone and then like your battery dies? If you have too many traumatic things open in the back of your brain, it like drains your energy, your mental focus. I have mental fog. And so through the rapid eye movement of watching the movement of the eye as you recall your story, it helps your brain release the five senses so that the brain can be like, so it can be stored properly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I feel like my brain is full right now. Like all these big words. I'm like, woo. Sorry, I'm getting a little punchy. It's been a long day.
One of our people posted that question, and I'm like, damn, she knows some big words. Like,
I know. I was like,
never heard. I knew about CBT because that's, I think, probably the most common counseling. She also asked about DBT.
Dialectical behavioral therapy, and that's important too. That helps you like it's like structure and boundaries and things of that nature. I'm not trained in DBT, but I know a little bit about it.
I feel like we're giving you like quiz questions that you
How'd all your training work out? Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's like you guys have as many acronyms as we do in the production world. Like I'm like, it's a whole nother language to speak.
It is.
How most people think when we all talk to one another, you know. Man, I'm learning so much here, but I don't know where to go from here. What question to ask next? Anybody else have questions? Please write them in. Carrie has been posting stuff on this chat the whole time. A lot of information that's on the SoundGirls.org website already. I know there's some self-care tips that we've put on the website. They were originally put together for sexual harassment. And so they're under there, soundgirls.org/self-care for trauma, right under that site there on our website, on that page. Sorry. There's, like you were saying, Psychology Today. What was some other ones? I just kind of want to throw them in case people have joined us.
So there's findatherapist.com also if you're looking for a therapist. And webmd.com, you can find a therapist on there as well. And I saw where she already put the crisis hotline numbers. They're on there too.
Awesome.
And there's also, I sent you guys the everyday self-care, ABCs of self-care. It's like A to Z suggestions on how to practice self-care during these difficult times.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing the information with us and helping us do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely needed. I know I don't know if I already brought this up in this one or if it was a podcast that we recorded earlier today. Like that's kind of, I was busy all week working and all weekend and I haven't had a lot of sleep. So my brain's catching up to life right now. But now I forgot my question. Do you see what's happening?
Self-care resources.
I knew I should have had coffee before this. Like I'm trying to get a coffee sponsor. That's my whole goal in life right now.
I know we need a SoundGirls podcast coffee sponsor. If anyone,
that would be awesome.
If anyone's out there,
we will drink it every single day.
All day.
Do you have any apps, Kaprece, that might be helpful? Yes.
That's a great question. So let me go to my little app one. So a couple of apps for anxiety, especially for sleep, is the Calm app, CALM, Calm. There's also mindfulness, and then Headspace and Breathe. Those are my four that my go-to apps, because depending on which app it is, some of them they actually give you visuals that are calming, like you know, either it's nature or it's some kind of geometric shape that's very peaceful to watch, and with the music, and it walks you through guided imagery and meditation to help calm your body and help you go to sleep or help you relax.
My watch actually does that.
Very
My
cool.
Apple Watch. It'll remind you to take a moment, and it even has this little like thing that tells you to breathe with it, and it like opens up and it beeps.
Oh,
like
awesome.
it like vibrates, so it opens up and then closes and then opens up and closes.
That's great. Yeah, that visual can be really helpful, and whenever you are like wanting to calm your body.
The you said Talkspace was one?
No, not Talkspace. Headspace.
Headspace. Okay.
Talkspace is a chat therapy, or online or a talk therapy over the phone.
Okay.
But
so
yeah,
the apps, I was going to say, I think I wrote them down. Calm, mindfulness, Headspace, and breathe.
Breathe.
Cool.
And the calm is just the word calm, and like, you know, like writing. And then Headspace is like an orange ball, and then mindfulness has a guy meditating, and breathe is just a big blue bee, in case you're looking for it.
We have a question that says, we've summarized how a person can understand the option for therapy and how it can help them. What visual outcome could you paint for us? What is the end goal for a person who has gone through or going through therapy now?
That's a great question. So first of all, you have to know your why of why you're coming into therapy. I always ask my clients, like, what are your goals? Because it's not my job to tell them where they want to go in therapy. You tell me your goals and I'll help you get there. And so it all depends on what your goal is. If you come in and you want to manage your anxiety, or you want to manage your depression, or you want to have more self-love or confidence, as some people call it. I've seen people come in who, I worked with one lady, and she was so sweet, but she was codependent, which means she was the last person on her list that she would think about, and people would take advantage of her, and like her coworkers take advantage of her family members, and like she was constantly. And so when she learned boundaries and she found her voice, and that means, you know, learning how to speak up for herself, her life changed dramatically. Like, people at work stopped throwing their job on her, which means she didn't work she was working 55 hours but getting paid for 30. And so her work went down to 30 hours. She didn't get fired because she was doing her job. She had more freed up space for her family. And one family member who was toxic, she put boundaries with, and they went to therapy. And so it depends on your goals. But like, you know, when you start a journey like that, sometimes it can feel like it's getting worse before it gets better, because with therapy, you're kind of digging up all your skeletons, and that's okay, because it will get a little muddy before it gets clear again, but, you know, just hang in there. Did you identify with that, Becky?
Yeah, can you tell? I'm just over here bobbing my head. Like, yeah, so my counselor told me, actually, that I was codependent. I had no idea. and I was like, and the first thing I went to a codependency like group, and the first thing she said, I'm just remembering this and laughing about it, because I'm sitting there, she's reading this list of things like, if you do this, you're a codependent. Because I was like, why am I in this group class? Like, why? You know, this is so dumb. And so she's reading down this list, and the last thing she said is, if you could think of like other people right now that meet every single one of those criteria and they should be here, you're codependent. And I was like, frig, dude. Because the whole time I was like, my mom needs this. Like, you know?
That's a dirty trick.
Yeah, it was a dirty trick. But I was like, all right, fine.
All right,
I'll admit it. You got me. But yeah, exactly what you were saying. Like, my life changed drastically. And not that meant I was totally healed or whatever, you know, but it meant for me, like, I had boundaries all of a sudden. I was working 80 hours a week, you know, and I was like, you know what? I don't need to do that. Like, I can actually quit one of my jobs that I had, and I can open space for something I actually love, because I don't feel
Yeah.
bad about quitting my job now and doing my passion more or throwing myself into something I like. That's okay. You know, and before for me, it wasn't okay because I was extremely codependent. You know, it was okay for me to text someone back and say, can I call you later this week, instead of immediately dropping everything I was doing and calling them back, which I did all the time. You know, and it was like at the detriment of me, I was doing all these other things. Like, I don't know if that's the right word, but it was
Yeah,
killing
it's called
me.
self-abandonment. Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah.
But that's a very powerful thing, Becky.
And I started having panic attacks because of it. That's how I noticed I needed some help.
Yeah.
Like before that, I was just running at Mach 8 and, you know, gassing up my car. I was getting a panic attack and I had no idea why. And I didn't even know. I thought maybe I was having a heart attack. I didn't know what was going on. When it was over, you know, I did a bunch of different doctor things because I did not want to admit that I needed some mental health stuff. There was a problem in my mind, you know, and in my psyche, and I had a lot of trauma from earlier in life, and I never dealt with any of it. So me recognizing I needed a mental health counselor that wasn't court ordered, and I really needed to put myself in something like that, it was hard for me to admit. And
Yeah.
I think there's still a little bit of that stigma in our country, maybe a lot,
For
that I'm not
sure.
aware of. And so I kind of want to talk about that just for a quick second. Like, just, do you find that there's still a lot of mental health stigma in our country? And maybe it's just our generation. I'm finding a lot of younger people like, oh yeah, I've been in therapy for years. And I was like, dude, it took me till I was 30. It's like to be like, fine, I'll go to therapy. I need it, you know? And then to not feel guilty about it either, or feel weird about it or whatever,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, the stigma is still out there, unfortunately, and it doesn't make any sense to me because, like, if you have high blood pressure, of course you're gonna go to the doctor, but like you're having high anxiety and like you can't go have, you know, mental health like you have physical health. I know so many clients who've had to sneak and come to me, and they didn't want me to tell any family member. Obviously, if it's an adolescent, I can't do that by law, but like once they're over 18, you know, I had one teen that she actually waited till 18 to come to me because her parents forbid her to come to therapy because they were very wealthy and affluent, and they didn't want anyone to think that she was like broken. You know, it's not about being broken; it's about needing help in an area where you need some support. You know, and you know, like if you break your leg, you're not gonna be like, suck it out. You know, you're gonna go and you're gonna have your knee looked at, you know, and like, and so it's the same thing with mental health. We need to be able to like hold space for the fact that our brain needs to be as healthy as the rest of our body.
I'm grateful for my dad having been really supportive of that, and he helped me work on a lot of the CBT stuff, and you know, do work outside of the sessions because he cared about it. You know, my other family members were very much against, like, how could you say out loud that you're in therapy? That's horrible. Something's wrong with you. But it's your brain, man. Like, your brain is such a huge part of your head and your body and all of your stuff. Like, I feel like it's just so neglected, and for people to like so heavily neglect something that matters to your everyday existence is just horrible. It's sad because how can you feel better physically if you emotionally don't feel better? And I know my stuff affects the way my body handles situations, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And if your psyche and your mind isn't functioning well, your brain's not going to work well. If your brain's not working well, you're going to be in a fog, and like you're not going to do your production, and your productivity is going to be affected. That's going to affect your job. You know, of how, you know, if you lose your edge, you know, it may be like you get replaced on a job or something. And so it's important that we have mental health for more reasons than one.
Yeah.
I don't know where to go. Sorry. I keep saying that, but
It's
I'm
okay.
looking at questions and trying to, it's a lot for me to multitask, you know that. Like,
Yeah.
without getting lost, y'all. My cartoon head's going, wow.
I appreciate Kaprece taking the time because it is hard for people to like open up and even admit that they can't handle something on their own. And I feel like that's really big in our industry. Is we don't want to admit that we're weak in any way, even if we're all human and all experience the same, or, some kind of issues in our life, either illness or mental illness or whatever. So I appreciate that you take the time. And I think that's for me, and I think Becky as well. That's why we were willing to talk about it like in front of other people to show, hey, it's okay.
I'm like 15, 20 years ago. Well, I guess probably 20 years ago. I would have never talked about this. Never. So I'm glad that it's becoming a front burner topic, for one, because I've seen what it's done in my own life and how being in therapy has helped me. And then it's trickled down to my family, too, which has been really cool to see. Just this last weekend, sitting with my sister-in-law, who's been drug-free for 2.5 years, and asking me some of the things that I've been doing for 20 years for my sobriety, and that she's in a rough spot right now. But like, to be able to sit there and say, I'm not a counselor, but I think you need somebody right now. Like, even if that just means call me, you have to keep talking. And because I've been there, I'm able to help her a little bit and direct her, the right direction, I guess, and what I didn't have. So I think that Absolutely. Talking about it is definitely helping. We got a couple more questions here. Thank you all for writing in questions. One of the people said, I used to have panic attacks all the time. I learned how to deal with it. Can you explain what panic attack is and how to cope with those when they do happen?
So panic attack is when your nervous system is peaked. So there's fight, flight, and freeze, right? So in fight, that's whenever you want to get aggressive and argue back and explode, right? And then when you take flight, you want to run, you want to get out of there, and then freeze is you just kind of shut down. And so a panic attack is your body is hyper regulated and it just can't take anymore. It's too much sensory input. And so there's a really cool way to handle panic attacks. It's called a grounding technique. And basically, if you can teach someone that you love or even yourself this, and I've had clients have panic attacks in office, and it's just bring them to the here and now. It's okay, what do you see in my office right now? What do you hear? What do you smell? Just engaging those 5 senses actually helps snap you out of the panic attack almost immediately. That grounding technique has been very useful for me and my son, because my son periodically will have panic attacks. He had one inside of King Kong at Universal.
No.
And it's super hot, and it was so loud, and the path narrowed, and he's like, "Mom, I'm having a panic attack." And so I said, what do you see, Judah? Look around, what do you hear? And where is this? And I could look at your shoe. And after a while, he's like, "Did you do one of those therapy things on me, Mom?" And so I'm like, "Yeah, I might have." But just into the here and now can actually stop that hypervigilance from peaking.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends has a little tip she does where she grabs her keys and says out loud what every key goes to, on her key ring, and that helps bring her back to breathing, and now she can breathe, and now she can work through the rest of it. My sister-in-law has to go somewhere private real quickly and talk to herself, kind of the same thing. She said she has to get in front of a mirror, though, and look at herself and say, "You're having a panic attack. It's okay. You're in a bathroom in a mirror, and you're all right." And she has to physically talk to herself, and I'm like, that works, and that's cool.
Yeah, present-centered awareness. Find something and okay, the lamp is yellow. I see this, and just bringing yourself back into touch with your body and your present awareness is what stops your nervous system from spiking.
We have one more question, and then we'll probably have to wrap it up because it's almost 5. Can you talk more on
5 on the East Coast? I just want to point.
Oh, sorry, 5 on the East Coast.
It's different.
I don't know what time it is for you. It's almost 5 for
Beth
us.
is probably up in the middle of the night, or whoever's in the UK watching this.
Thank you, Becky.
Sorry. I had to say it because I feel
No,
bad.
you're right.
Everybody's not in the same place.
We're all in the three of us are in the same time zone.
That's true.
That is
So
true.
I'm trying to make it more inclusive for everyone.
Thank you, Becky.
I'm a little punchy. I told you.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
I need a nap, Suze.
It's 5:00. We do. For us, we need a nap. How do you find out if you are suffering from repressed trauma? Is there something that like sparks that you can identify, or is that something like a therapist might help you with more?
Both, but you absolutely, and well, no, I actually provided a how do you know if you're in trauma worksheet. So some of the signs would be like re-experiencing it, like replaying the memory over and over again. Having nightmares is also a sign of flashbacks. Hyperactive nervous system, that's where you feel like you're on guard. And like, I didn't know this for years, but like I was super jumpy. Like someone would walk up behind me and I would just jump. I'd be startled. That I didn't realize my body was telling me that I had trauma trapped in my body, that hypervigilance. My husband would be like, he would announce himself like 3 times before he came in the room. And and I didn't realize that it's true. And I would be like, I'd scream anyway. And I didn't realize I had trauma trapped in my body. And so that's, the hyperactive nervous system causes that. Being easily startled, difficult sleeping, a loss of interest, and sex and other activities, avoidance, when you start avoiding things, trying not to think, trying to shut down, trying to numb, emotional reactions. And a lot of times I'll say an in proportion emotional reaction, a small activating event, and you have a really big reaction to it. And so change, just a change of view, like the world is no longer a safe place. If that feels like a real truth to you, like this big sweeping, like overgeneralization of how, like a worldview, that's a sign right there too. Maybe you need to talk to somebody. Maybe there's some trauma that you need to work through.
So that's kind of like, that's why we're doing the webinar, is the trauma, right, of that, because right now I feel like everybody feels that way. The world is in this big sweeping worldview of frig me. It's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah,
now we're all traumatized. Yeah. So that's what
true.
you're saying, though. There is situational trauma because it's happening to everyone right now.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that we're in a global trauma, we're in a national trauma, but it also activates our like childhood trauma or our trauma throughout our life that we've experienced, and because trauma gets like stored on top of each other, almost like dominoes. When one gets activated, the entire like row, neural pathway gets activated, and that's where the panic attack comes in. And so it's important to like turn off some of those trauma apps and in therapy. And that's why I do like bilateral therapies like EMDR or ART, which is accelerated resolution therapy. Those are really good with helping your body like turn those off.
Thank you so much, Kaprece.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I do want to mention that we have someone watching from Sydney, Australia, and someone else in Germany, and it is 11 p.m. there.
Thank you for clarifying.
Australia, I'd really have to map that one out because I don't remember, but thank you guys for joining us, everyone who's watching. And thank you so much, Kaprece, for helping us clear our brains and encourage us that we all probably have something going on.
We all do. And I just want to thank you guys. Without you guys, the world could not have stayed connected. Like, you guys are the reason why we do have a connection. And so you guys are so vital and important, and it's my honor to be able to help in any way I can.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you.
Thanks, all you friends out there. Till next time.
I don't know how to end the thing.